The Sporland division of Parker Hannifin proudly sponsors the Advanced Refrigeration podcast. There are a lot of questions surrounding the transition to A2L refrigerants and a lot of talking heads disseminating nebulous answers. But when your technician is face-to-face with the first A2L transition project, where do you turn for real-world answers about this specific job? Parker Sporland's Virtual Engineer is an innovative online design tool to size and select the correct components for climate control and refrigeration applications. Get your A2L system flow and component selection answers in 3 simple steps. Enter your application details, size, and select products, then download your project files. It's that easy. Try it at absolutely no cost. Visit sporlin.com and navigate to the Resource Center. Parker Sporland, leading the charge.
No, I did not go to Castanio, Jake. I called him last week to see if he was around, but he didn't call me back.
You should make him go to Casa Bonita with you. He's probably just sitting, doing nothing at his horse ranch that he lives in.
That's right. He does have a horse thing, doesn't he?
Yeah. Sleeps in a barn or some shit.
Probably because his wife doesn't like it. I sleep in a barn. I know how that feels. So
You sleep in
sleep on the couch. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Advanced Refrigeration Podcast. You're with your host, Brett Wetzel and Kevin Compass. How you doing, buddy?
It's starting to get hot, and in this room is a sauna right now.
Okay, stop being a bitch. And actually, I don't know. You're an air conditioning refrigeration guy, so figure it out.
I know my wife didn't want to turn the air on yet, and I can't really.
I think that might be you. I don't think that's her.
I can't really open the window either because everybody's mowing their grass right now, and it would be extremely loud.
Like I said, close the blinds. It looks like the blinds are open.
They're 100% closed. I can't afford good blinds.
I want to punch you when you say shit like that. You know that.
I only buy cheap blinds because I have kids and animals, and they destroy everything. So I can't afford good ones because they'll be broken once a week.
Oh, but you can afford an axle for your Jeep every other month.
Yeah, but if I break that, it's fine because it's not like getting broken by kids every day.
Nice.
You can't have nice things when you have kids.
Here you go. Just when they're older.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah. You have older kids. Mine destroy everything.
Your kids are the same age as mine, except for the one. So, whatever.
What'd you do this week?
I'm training in good old Colorado.
Ugh.
It's raining. It's doing nothing but perpetually raining a lot here, which I was told that really doesn't happen nearly as much, but it's been an utter, it's been ridiculous all day. How about you? What are you doing?
I am pulling wire. We are like just going gangbusters with EMS jobs, trying to get as many done as we can in the beginning of the year because we're pretty slow up on construction right now. Or we slowed down for a month or two, so we got 1 million guys to pull wire. So I've been pulling wire with fitters, trying to get everything caught up and get all these pulls done and everything landed on board. So when we go to do these EMS changeovers, me and my guys are just coming in and just knocking them out real quick.
So are you guys local right now, or?
Yeah, no, working in Chicago.
Okay. So what's the deal then? So you're doing, so you guys are pulling wire. Why are you pulling the wire? Shouldn't you be like, I don't know, hiring electricians to pull the wire?
No, they fuck it up every time.
What do you mean?
I would rather pull, at this point, I'd rather pull it myself. It's done faster, and I know it's done, and I don't have to.
I don't know if it's done faster. It's done the way that you want it.
100% faster. Like we were just slaughtering today. Like the fitters do it better every time. Like they're faster. They do it better. It looks cleaner, and I don't have to trim 45 feet of wire down every time. Everything's like the exact length it needs to be, and everything's labeled.
You don't like when there's 20 feet at the end of the loop?
No, it absolutely drives me fucking insane because it gets all tangled up, especially when you're on top of glass door cases and there's a remote panel out there and you're sitting on top of glass door cases. And then I showed up today and there was like 97 chairs on top of the glass door cases and like tables and like beach stuff. I don't know why this chain out by us does this, but they throw like all their summer. Yeah. So So I walked it last week to make a punch or a pull list. And over the weekend, apparently they put all this shit on top of the cases. I'm like, oh, you gotta be freaking kidding me.
For a second there, I thought you meant like the electricians were just putting up beach blankets and chairs up on top of the cases and just hanging out.
No, it's like there's like a million things that they're now. So like now everybody's trying not to pull off the cases, and there's no room to put any of this stuff to move it. So it's like we're working around it. So it's a nightmare.
Cool. That sounds awfully fun. So what did you want to talk about? You want to talk about basics?
We're going back to the basics with thermostats and cold controls. We'll do one more basic episode with this, and because still getting a lot of questions with stuff like this for green guys. So we were talking about defrost clocks last week, guys. Now we're going to talk about thermostats, cold controls, and I'll dive a little bit more into defrost termination click-ons and stuff like that. First and foremost, a thermostat and a cold control are the same thing in a sense. They both cycle refrigeration on and off. A cold control is slightly different with the way they word it. A cold control more or less is going to be what you would see like in a true cooler where it's shoved inside of the coil. So a cold control would be cycling off coil temperature, where you'd see smaller self-containeds do that.
So you'll notice like on self-contained, they typically don't have the defrost clock, and we're talking about coolers only. And so a lot of times they'll have a pigtail, or they'll have, you know what I mean by pigtail, literally a curled up thing of Kepler tube. They get shoved inside the coil, and then they have another one that basically gets laid up, you know, on like attached to the coil. And so these things usually have a constant cutout, or I'm sorry, constant cut in of something above, let's just say 41 degrees or something like that, or 43 degrees or something like that. So it's ensured that it's not going to start back up until the coil is thoroughly defrosted. So then that way you set it, you basically, when you turn the dial from 0 to 10 or whatever the hell it might be, you're essentially setting the cut out temperature, which is adjustable, but the cut in temperature is going to be a constant, something done from the manufacturer, whoever makes it, Ranco or whoever. They usually make them for the specific OEM that they're connected.
Correct. It matters when you're doing it where the bulb placement is, and you could also have issues with these. Say if it's on a true, a plug cap tube could make a unit run too cold for a little while. So what ends up happening is you end up starving for refrigerant, and that part of the coil doesn't get cold enough, but the coil's still getting cold enough to make the box freeze stuff. So on a true, you could possibly end up in a spot where like you think you have a bad cold control, and it's not actually a bad cold control. The coil temperature at that location is not getting down to the actual temperature it needs to. And then you pretty much have to strap a bulb to it and see what it's getting down to. Low refrigerant can cause the same thing with cold control stuff. It is super important to make sure you have good refrigerant flow on that side. If you are running too cold, don't just condemn the cold control.
Yeah, a lot of times you'll see where the unit it'll run like for a briefer amount of time, because at that point, if you lose refrigerant inherently on a critically charged unit, your pressure's going to run lower, which means you're inherently going to run a lower saturated. And they typically try to put the cold control on the first couple passes where the coil is. So if you're running a high superheat, you won't see it in the cold control as far as it's defrosting. You put it at the coldest part, because in that way you get a full defrost every single time.
Correct. Some of the trues were, warmer, more towards the end of the evaporator on some of them. I'm not a big fan of using cold controls. Usually when one dies, I rip it out and I put a Dixel in its place. Mm-hmm. I'll replace it with a defrost timer any day over that in defrost term. But they're out there. They're super simple. There's not much to them. You're just having a normally open or contact on it. And when it gets up to temp, it closes. where it comes up to the cut-in temp, it closes, and the cut-out temp, it opens. Very simple control. Calibrating them just using a thermometer and watching it cycle. Super simple, but generally I'm replacing them with digital controls. They're way easier, way more reliable, and it's going to give better box temp and having defrost.
True. So this next schematic that I have up here, basically it's just a time clock running a regular run-of-the-mill cooler. There's no reason to shut off the fans. We have no defrost heaters at all. So in this instance, we is cutting off and on the liquid line solenoid valve and cutting the power to the thermostat as well. And that's as easy as it gets.
You can get away with, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
You can get away with running some coolers with no defrost, low traffic coolers, but they have to have a pretty wide swing on the cut in and cut out.
Yeah, and some people actually, what they'll do is they'll set their pressure control. It's not really a practice that's done quite frequently anymore, but they'll set their pressure control where they'll cut it out. All right, let's just say we have a 10-degree TD on our coil for a meat walk-in or something, right? And so we're trying to maintain 30-degree box temperature. And if we have a 10-degree TD, that means we're basically wanting our coil down to get down to 20 degrees. What I'll typically do is set it like 1 degree lower than what that is, just to get it a little bit colder than the box temperature. So I'll get it down to about 19, which will give me about 29-degree box temperature. And once the pressure switch cuts out on that pressure, we won't let it cut back in until we're ensured that we have a pressure that's basically equated to a good saturation that is going to ensure that that coil is completely clear of frost. You're talking, what do you think, about 40, 42 degrees, somewhere in there?
Yeah, I mean, that's some pretty old school stuff. You still see it every once in a while. It's some mom and pop stuff you run into, but it'd be pretty difficult to do with a lot of glide refrigerants. Like 448, that would be a pain.
Yeah, it would.
It would take a lot of playing around. It's at the point where it would not be worth it. But no, that you still see some newer self-contains coming out with the defrost clock with the pressure control on there for termination.
Oh, really?
I just seen it the other day.
Really? There's a couple old school Costco cases that it's a time clock, and it's a built-in pressure switch in the time clock for the termination.
Yeah,
you've seen those before?
Some of the older self-contains they had. Yeah, a lot of those are pretty much gone, but you still see them every once in a while. If the clock fails, it's pretty much just replace it with digital. Getting those clocks is pretty difficult at this point.
Yeah, it would be easier just to get a regular 81435 and throw in a pressure switch for the termination rather than a temperature control.
Yeah, that's going to be as simple as it can be. Let's talk thermostats, guys. Thermostats come in many different manufacturers, whether it's Renko, Johnson Controls, Penn, who's the other ones, Dixel, whether it's Danfoss and KE2. They all do the same thing, guys. It just depends on what you're after. Me personally, I like the KE2 or the Dixel stuff. The KE2 ones are pretty nice. They're pretty slim. They make a temperature and defrost model. It's very compatible against the Johnson Controls, like Penn. What is it? It used to be a 421. Now it's like an A421, or it's
yeah. Are you talking about just the digital temperature control?
Digital temperature control. I'm gonna go with one of those or a Penn every time. I like the KE2 ones. I think they're a little bit nicer display, and they do defrost also. The Penn one, they do make a 421, an A421 that does do defrost also. So you could do it all in one with one of those. The Renkos, obviously they're not going to do defrost. It's just temperature control. If you're going Dixel or Danfoss or Corel, that's going to be the better choice out of all of them, because you have you have alarming parameters. You can set up an alarm relay. You have a lot more control out of one of those mini controllers than you do anything else. If you're going old school,
No, I just didn't realize they had the ones with the defrost.
The pen ones, yeah, it's a part number. Like they hardly stock them, but the supply houses up by us have them. So they do make a pen one with a built-in defrost in it. I'm not a big fan of the new A419s where we're changing the cut in, cut out, changes whether it's heating or cooling. It's a pain in the ass.
It took me the longest time to figure that out. It was so freaking confusing.
Yeah, the instructions aren't real clear. So not the biggest fan just because of that. But other than that, those are a solid control. Like they're pretty reliable. I don't like the Rankos. I think the ETCs are shit.
Today's episode is sponsored by the Refrigeration RDP series differential pressure monitors from Westermeyer Industries, now available for transcritical CO2 systems in addition to other common pressures and refrigerants. When the filter element of your coalescing oil separator is contaminated, it can hurt your system's performance and efficiency. But how do you know when it's time to replace that filter? Wait too long to replace, and you could end up with a nasty filter blowout. But replacing too often can be a waste of time and money. The answer is installing a differential pressure monitor. The RDP series differential pressure monitors, including the new transcritical CO2 model, are available now from Westermeyer Industries. To find out more information, email sales@westermeyerin.com. That's WESTERMEYERIN.com.
What? Every time the power goes out, E1 EEPROM failure. I don't know how many of those.
I'm not going to disagree with you.
But I don't know how many of those at Whole Foods over the years, like I changed out in all those Barker cases where there's 900 thermostats in the Barker cases for some reason.
In the back wall.
Yeah.
That's the one you're talking about, the Target cases. And then all of a sudden, like they decided to put liquid line solenoids in them. And then all of a sudden that wouldn't work. And then it would just eat shit. And you're like, why? I'm feeding liquid up in my rack. Why isn't it working?
Yeah. And then you're ripping some fancy ass cheese island all apart because they're at a power outage and 3 of the thermostats are just randomly toast. That's a great time. Making a cheese lady cry.
I gotta stack all that back the way it was.
I literally had one bawling the one day, like freaking out because I made her pull the whole like 24-foot of cheese because I had to change 3 of them after a power outage.
And there's nothing you can do. There's absolutely nothing you can do.
You got to rip the whole back wall out.
And even if you try to do the cheap way, you're going to get electrocuted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're getting shocked. Like in half the time, you can't even do it. Like you can't even get to the bottom of the thermostat. So like I'm a big fan of not using the Rankos.
The thermostat's this big and the hole is this big.
Yeah. I will say this though. The one advantage of the Rankos is you can use multiple sensors and wire them in parallel. And it'll average. So if you do we've had some multi-decks where we've had some issues where like certain cases were running cold, certain cases are warm, and they didn't really balance out. Condensing unit's way too big. We got the old DOE Texas special. So it's everything's sized for Texas. So like condensing unit for size for Texas in Indiana, when it's 10 degrees outside, it's running like a -2 suction. Don't act like you don't know that's true.
No, because I've been down in Texas too long.
Yeah, so you could average the sensors out. So you could wire the Rankos in parallel. So you could wire, say, I think it's 8 or 9 sensors or something like that, something crazy like that. You could wire them in parallel, and that'll get you an averaging. It could fix issues like that. But at that point, you might as well put in a mini controller and just be done with it. I don't think you could average the Danfosses and Corels or Dixels. I don't think you could wire them in, could you?
So there's some of them that you can. I know that I'm freaking having a brain fart here, but I know there's instructions for it. You know what I mean? There's physical instructions for exactly what you're talking about. Like I know you can do it on some Johnson Control stuff, like Lennox stuff. You can do it for the Lennox ones. Danfoss, you can do it. I thought like you could do like actual Danfoss sensors. There's a couple different ones that you just have to read the IOM because some of them do it, some of them don't.
Yeah, and then same thing with if you are grabbing like the mini, like Dixel XR 75 CXs or whatever they are, 60 CR, whatever the acronym is for it. You have to make sure if you're going to try to integrate it to an E3 or E2, only certain models have description files for those controllers and are integratable, meaning like only certain ones Copeland has written the files for to make it Modbus capable. So just be aware of that. If you do need to do that, you may need to order the correct one from Copeland.
Are we just with the different
Like the
controllers that can talk to?
like the Dixels. There's a million different Dixel, like universal controllers, like XR75CXs, 60CXs, like the 208, 230, the 115 volt. I carry 115 volt and the 208, 230 in my truck of like the supply house, like the general one that like most supply houses have. It is not integratable to the E3 or E2. Like I don't think there's a description file for it, but it's still a solid control that you could use.
So I know you were talking about the KE2 earlier, and I know that not every single one has the defrost capabilities. Some are just a thermostat, and some actually have the defrost.
It's temp and defrost is what it is. Like it's a small, but it is the same price basically as like a Johnson Controls pen.
You're talking about the one that looks like the size of a thermostat, right?
Correct. It's the size of an A419. So it is the same price within a couple dollars of that. The big thing I like about the KE2 one is you can get a longer sensor lead. So that is a big thing. Now, troubleshoot. What's your thoughts on this? So like with the digitals, are you wiring stuff normally closed, normally open? I'm wired normally closed.
Normally closed it is.
Yeah,
because
I'm wired normally closed.
You want it to fail. It's such a matter that it's going to bring on the liquid and solenoid. But the bitches, it's
the only time I will not do it is a floral cooler or something where it's like if it gets too cold, it's worse.
Yeah, pharmaceuticals, right?
Yeah.
If you have, let's just say you have four thermostats that are supposed to operate a liquid line solenoid, I would do probably 2 normally open and 2 normally closed in that. So then at least we're still keeping it cold, but we're not bringing it to the point of shit, the product's junk. You know what I mean?
Correct. Yeah, most like critical stuff like meat, especially frozen. Who gives a shit if the freezer runs too cold? Wired normally closed. So
Agree.
with that, now the mechanicals it's a 3-wire switch. So it's going to be close on a rise in temperature. So from common to close on a rise in temperature. And with the mechanical, you really don't have much to do there. It's just open or close. I personally hate the mechanicals now. I was a huge mechanical, like the inner boomer in me. Loved them, but I think like the pen shit has gone to hell with the cheaper mechanical stats. They're like right out of the box. They're like 15 degrees off. So you have to calibrate those. Just because it says 35 on the dial doesn't mean it's even close.
Yeah, the other thing about that is you also have to worry about the range. There's a slider on there, and if my internet didn't suck so bad, I could show you. So on the side of there's basically a slider, and that slider is the differential. I believe it's from 0 to 12, if I'm not mistaken. Where you can actually, you can have up to a 12 degree differential when basically bringing it back on. So it doesn't work too fantastic for defrost termination or whatever, but it's because you can't do like a good spread, if you will.
Yeah, no, 10 years ago, those were the Cadillacs of controls. Now they're just, there's ones better than others. I'm not a big fan of them. If I can get rid of them, then I'm going to get rid of them, and I'm going to put a digital in its place. And if you are going to use one, I would definitely take it and calibrate it. Have you ever done dual temp with one of these? I'm pretty sure you can, like thermostat control. Like I'm pretty sure if you close between negative and the binary, I think you could switch the temperature. I'm pretty sure you can.
No, not that I'm aware of.
So
optional switch. Oh, for a dual temp input.
Yeah, I think you can do dual temp with them.
No, never done it. Never had a reason.
Yeah. So these guys, simple as could be. You got your 240, you got your common, or you got your 120. So if it's 120, it's going to be AC, common, and 120. And then if it's 240, it's going to be the other way around. And then on your right, you have your Form C contact relay. The reason it's a Form C contact is you have three inputs there. You have normally closed, common, normally open. So that's where you land your wires. So your incoming powers that you're breaking is going to land on common, and we're going to wire it normally closed if we need it to fail on. If it's meat, deli, dairy, anything you want to not shut off if it fails, and you want it to wire it normally closed. If you need it to, if you don't really care that it shuts off when it fails, then you're going to wire it normally open. Meaning if there's a sensor failure, if it reads too cold, if it just shits the bed, if there's a power outage and the Renko reads S1. So that's how I would do it.
I'm wondering, I've never thought about this before until now, but to have a secondary pressure control on the unit. So, in case it starts getting down too low, like that acts as your failsafe. Like, you know what I mean? Like you have your safety upstairs, like your pump down safety, which is usually going to be set lower than what the temperature they're trying to achieve. But you could essentially put another pressure control within series of the thermostat. So if God forbid it starts getting lower than what it should, it'll essentially shut it down in a fail-safe operation.
At that point, just put 3 thermostats in.
Fine.
Yeah, these are fairly simple, guys. Keep them dry. The big thing I see with these things failing is people don't use a watertight connector on the bottom where the wires come through, and they end up getting moisture in them, and they fail.
Or they end up not insulating, like where the wires are actually coming out, like where it goes into the box. And when I mean like into the actual cooler box, and what ends up happening is you have water build up from the difference in temperatures. That water ends up going in. I saw one guy drill it into the top of the thermostat. I'm like, what are you doing? Like any kind of connection that has the possibility of condensation always supposed to come in from the bottom. Because otherwise it's going to land all over there and end up causing this thing to actually short out.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, so that one you were talking about has the heating and cooling standard, which changes how it's going to do the cut in and cut out.
Pisses me off.
What, the jumpers?
No, the jumpers are annoying.
I don't know what else you would do besides the jumpers other than having those double set points the way it is. A lot of times too, these things here, let me add this back. So you have the set point, the differential, and the anti-short cycle delay. OFS temperature off. Oh, no, we don't want that. And sensor failure operation. So either we can make it energized or de-energized. Based off of that, basically we would want it not energized if we hooked it up to the normally closed set of contacts. Agreed?
Correct. And then sensor fail. You got the sensor fail. Is that what you were just talking about?
Yeah.
Sorry, my brain stopped working for a second.
That's okay. It happens. What other control did you want to talk about?
That's about it. The KE2 one's pretty simple. It's menu driven, just on off, just like a Johnson controls. Same thing, Form C contact, wired the same way. It's basically like the same control, just a little fancier. And then they do get into, you can get more with low temp stuff where you could actually do their actual control all in one. Obviously, that's a whole different ball game. We've done podcasts on that, but me personally, I'm either going to choose the Dixel or the KE2 stuff to replace this stuff for truck stock at least.
Do you know what kind of sensors that the Johnson control one uses?
2Ks.
Did they really?
Yeah, you could use the Johnson control ones. You could use the Johnson control ones for control sensors.
What?
Yeah.
Control isn't 2K.
It's 2 point something.
Really?
2.2K ohms. Yeah. I don't know. We use them all the time out here.
of course, doesn't say. I'd be curious to see, like, obviously we know the KU2 is a 2K sensor. Right?
Yep. And so is most Novar a lot of Novar stuff.
Yeah. Damn it, I can't find it. And my internet just sucks because I'm sitting at a awesome home. So having a rough time being jammy today, so I apologize. I don't know, is there anything else that you want to talk about with these, or
I think it's about it.
you want to break down? Yeah.
You can keep it a short episode.
Okay. Well, guys, I guess we'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for listening.
Thanks. It's easy.